Okay, let's dive in. Welcome, everyone, to the deep dive.
Hello.
Today, we're really getting into some practical stuff. We've got source material focusing on something fundamental, how to express your opinions confidently, naturally in English.
That's right. It's about sharing your thoughts, agreeing, disagreeing,
Hmm.
all that crucial interaction stuff.
Exactly. And the source material really highlights a common sticking point for learners, doesn't it?
It really does. You can know the grammar, have the vocabulary, but then when you actually want to say what you think, it feels, well, clunky sometimes,
Yeah, you fall back on the same old phrases like, I think this, or just a flat, I agree.
which are fine. They work, obviously. But the source material points out that real conversations, the dynamic ones with friends or at work, they need a bit more variety.
More of your actual voice and perspective coming through.
Precisely. It's not just about being correct. It's about sounding fluent, natural, engaged, authentic communication.
So that's our mission today in this deep dive, to really unpack the strategies and phrases from this source. We want to help build up your toolkit.
So by the end, you'll feel hopefully more comfortable jumping into those discussions and sounding, well, more like yourself in English.
We're going to break down what the source covers. First up, giving your opinion with more confidence, moving beyond just, I think.
Then, how to agree with someone naturally so it doesn't sound abrupt.
And the tricky one, disagreeing politely. Super important skill.
Definitely. And finally, how to inject a bit of personality. Make your opinions more engaging, maybe even a bit memorable.
Yeah, make people actually want to hear what you think.
That's the goal, giving you the tools to feel comfortable and effective.
Right. Think of it like upgrading your conversational toolkit. Let's start with that first big area from the source. Giving your opinion with confidence and variety. Getting away from just, I think.
Yeah, the source makes a great point. I think is fine, totally normal, but relying on it all the time can make you sound a bit repetitive. Maybe even a little less sure than you actually feel.
Or just less sophisticated.
Oh, wait.
Native speakers mix it up, right? Using different phrases shows more command.
Exactly. Variety is key for fluency. So the source suggests alternatives. Things like, in my opinion, personally, I believe,
Yeah,
from my perspective.
I'd say that.
Right.
And as far as I'm concerned, let's dig into these one by one. The source gives an example for, in my opinion.
It does. In my opinion, learning a new language is one of the best ways to expand your thinking.
Okay, clear, direct. Feels pretty standard, right? In my opinion.
It is. Very standard, very useful. It clearly flags what follows as your view. You can use it pretty much anywhere, formally or informally. It just signals subjectivity.
Let's play with it. How about discussing work stuff? In my opinion, we need to rethink our marketing strategy for the next quarter.
Yeah, works perfectly. Or talking about, say, films. In my opinion, the sequel wasn't nearly as good as the original.
Classic movie debate point. Maybe something about lifestyle choices. In my opinion, spending time outdoors is essential for mental well-being.
Definitely. Or even simpler things. In my opinion, this coffee shop makes the best latte in town. It's just a clear marker. Here's my take. Solid and reliable.
Okay, what about the next one? Personally, I believe. That word personally feels like it adds something extra.
It really does. Personally shifts the focus.
Mm-hmm.
It highlights that this is your individual stance, maybe based on your experience or values. It can feel a bit stronger, more conviction-based than just, in my opinion.
And I believe usually sounds stronger than I think too, doesn't it? I think can be a bit hesitant.
Right. I believe carries more weight, more certainty. The source example captures this. Personally, I believe remote work is fantastic because it gives people more flexibility. You hear that personal conviction.
Yeah, it feels rooted in their experience. Let's try some more. How about a big topic? Personally, I believe access to quality healthcare is a fundamental human right.
See, that has real conviction. Or about technology. Personally, I believe social media causes more harm than good, despite its connectivity benefits. That personally acknowledges it might be a debated point.
Or even preferences. Personally, I believe dogs make better pets than cats. A classic, potentially controversial personal belief.
Exactly. Or, personally, I believe starting the day with exercise makes a huge difference to my energy levels. It emphasizes the individual experience and conviction. It gives you space to own your view, even if others disagree.
Okay, moving on. The source lists, from my perspective, how does this one change the feel?
From my perspective,
You should-
is interesting. It's like saying, here's how I see it from where I'm standing. It inherently acknowledges that other viewpoints, other perspectives exist. It frames your opinion as one specific angle.
Right, less like stating a universal fact and more like sharing your specific viewpoint based on your context or experience.
Precisely.
Yeah.
The source didn't give a specific example here, but we can easily make some. Imagine discussing a complex problem at work.
Okay. From my perspective, the communication breakdown seems to be the main issue here.
Yeah, you're identifying the problem based on your position or view of the situation, or debating priorities. From my perspective, focusing on customer retention is more crucial right now than acquiring new ones.
That clearly frames it as your strategic viewpoint. How about something more personal? From my perspective, living minimally reduces stress significantly.
Perfect. It acknowledges that others might see it differently, maybe valuing abundance or convenience, but from your perspective, minimalism is key. Or maybe evaluating a change. From my perspective, the new office layout isn't really conducive to focused work.
It's a polite way to offer your view while implicitly leaving room for others. I like that one.
Me too. It feels quite considered.
Okay, next from the source. I'd say that. This sounds really common, quite conversational.
Absolutely. I'd say that is probably one of the most natural, everyday ways to offer an opinion. It often feels a little softer, maybe less formal or definitive than, in my opinion, or I believe. It's like you're gently suggesting your thought.
Yeah, like offering an observation or an estimate. The source uses, I'd say, later in a different example, but let's create a standalone one, talking about a recent presentation.
Sure. I'd say that the key message came across really clearly. Simple, direct opinion.
Or giving advice. I'd say that you should probably double-check those figures before sending the report.
Good one. It softens the advice slightly. Or speculating about something. I'd say that team is likely to win the championship this year.
Right. It's your prediction, your assessment, or commenting on food again. I'd say that this needs a little more salt.
Very natural. Or about difficulty. I'd say that learning the basics is easy, but mastering it takes years. It's just a really smooth, common way to share your assessment.
Okay, the last one in this group from the source is, as far as I'm concerned, this feels a bit different again, maybe stronger.
It can be, yeah, as far as I'm concerned. Often signals that you're basing your opinion on what matters to you or within the scope of your specific interest or priorities. It can imply that other factors might exist, but for you, this is the bottom line.
Sometimes it can sound a little dismissive of other factors, maybe. Not always, but it has that potential nuance.
It can, depending on the tone. You have to be a bit careful with it. The source gives an example where they soften it. As far as I'm concerned, it's a great option, but it depends on the person's job and lifestyle. So they state their view, then immediately add a condition.
Right, showing they're focused on its greatness for them or in a certain context. Let's try some more. Evaluating a candidate. As far as I'm concerned, she's the best fit for the role because her experience aligns perfectly with our needs.
Yeah, see how that focuses on your concern, the team's needs? Or maybe setting a boundary. As far as I'm concerned, leaving work at 5 p.m. is non-negotiable for my work-life balance.
That's very clear about your personal priority. Or a simple preference. As far as I'm concerned, summer is the best season of the year.
Or judging a situation. As far as I'm concerned, the meeting was a waste of time because no decisions were made. Your criterion for success decisions wasn't met.
So looking at this whole set, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, I'd say that as far as I'm concerned, it's quite a range.
It really is. It's not just about replacing I think. It's about choosing the phrase that adds the right flavor about formality, conviction, perspective, casualness, or priority.
And getting comfortable with these options makes you sound, well, more fluent and definitely more confident because you're choosing your words deliberately.
Exactly. You're showing a deeper understanding of how to frame your thoughts in English.
So the takeaway is, next time you go to say, I think, ma'am, maybe pause for a split second, is there another phrase here that captures your meaning even better?
Worth trying. It takes practice, but it pays off.
Okay, fantastic. That covers getting your opinion out there. But conversations are a two-way street, right? Someone else says something, and you agree. What then? The source has great tips on agreeing naturally.
Yes, because just saying I agree can sometimes feel a bit abrupt. Or maybe not very enthusiastic.
Yeah, it doesn't add much to the conversation flow. The source points out that native speakers usually do more than just agree. They often share how much they agree or why.
Keeps the energy up, validates the other speaker. So the source gives source phrases like, I completely agree with you.
That's a great point.
I couldn't agree more.
You're absolutely right.
And exactly, that's what I was thinking.
Okay, let's unpack these. I completely agree with you. Seems pretty straightforward, total agreement.
It is strong, Clear leaves no doubt. Now, the source cleverly combines examples. Someone says exercise is really important for mental health.
Right. And instead of just, I agree, the suggested replies were, you're absolutely right. Exercise helps reduce stress and keeps you energized.
Or, that's a great point. I always feel better after a workout.
Notice how both add something extra. You're absolutely right, adds the reason, reduces stress. That's a great point. Adds personal experience. I feel better. That's the key, elaborating slightly.
Yes. Let's try this pattern. Suppose someone says, this project deadline is really tight.
You could say, I completely agree with you. We're going to need to work very efficiently to meet it. Agrees and adds the implication.
Or if they say, learning a musical instrument is so rewarding, but it takes dedication.
You could respond, you're absolutely right. The daily practice is tough, but hearing the improvement makes it worthwhile. Affirms both parts of their statement.
Okay, how about that's a great point. The source example, that's a great point. I always feel better after a workout. Shows it validates the quality of their insight.
Right. So if someone observes the user interface on this new app is much more intuitive.
You could say, that's a great point. I noticed that too. Finding the settings is so much easier now. Validates their observation and adds a specific example.
Or if they argue, investing in employee training pays off in the long run.
You might reply, that's a great point. Skilled employees are more productive and tend to stay longer. You praise the idea and explain why it's a good point.
I couldn't agree more. That sounds like the maximum level of agreement, right?
It really is. It means 100%, total alignment. You use this when you feel very strongly, very enthusiastically about what they said.
Okay. If someone declares, public libraries are such an invaluable community resource.
You could jump in with, oh, I couldn't agree more. Free access to books and information is just so important. Expresses strong agreement and reinforces the value.
Or, if they complain, trying to assemble flat-pack furniture is the ultimate test of patience.
You could laugh and say, I couldn't agree more. Those instructions are designed to cause arguments, I swear. Shares the feeling intensely.
Okay, and the last one. Exactly. That's what I was thinking. What's special about this one?
This one creates a real connection. Exactly. Is strong agreement, and that's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Shows that you were right there with them, having the same thought. It builds instant rapport.
Like mind melding. So if someone suggests, maybe we should try brainstorming solutions on the whiteboard instead of just talking.
You could say, exactly. That's what I was thinking. Visualizing it might help us see new connections. Validates and shows shared thought process.
Or if they notice, this coffee tastes a bit burnt.
You might sip yours and say, exactly. That's what I'm thinking. It's got that slightly bitter edge today. Perfect for shared sensory experiences.
These agreement phrases are so much better than just, I agree. They show energy, enthusiasm, active listening.
And they often involve adding that little bit extra, a reason, an example, a shared feeling, which is what makes conversation flow naturally. It shows you're really engaged.
Builds that positive connection. Okay, but life isn't always agreeable. The source tackles a necessary skill of disagreeing, but doing it politely.
Crucial. Because disagreement is inevitable, even healthy. It's how we explore different angles, but how you do it matters hugely. Just saying, I disagree or you're wrong can shut things down fast.
Yeah, makes people defensive. So the source emphasizes a key strategy. Acknowledge their point first, show you've heard them before you offer your different view.
It's about respect. Validating their perspective, even if you don't share it. The source suggests phrases like, I see your point, but...
I get what you're saying, but I feel differently.
That's an interesting perspective, but I think...
I respect your opinion, but I have a different view.
And I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently. Notice the pattern. Acknowledge, then pivot with but or similar.
Let's look at, I see your point, but... The source example was about social media being bad. The polite reply, I see your point, but I think social media has some benefits too, like keeping people connected.
I see your point, directly says, I understand your logic or perspective. Then but signals the shift. It's very effective.
Let's try it. Someone argues, working from home permanently reduces team cohesion.
You could respond, I see your point, maintaining that social connection takes more effort remotely. But I think with the right tools and intentional check-ins, strong cohesion is still possible. Acknowledges the challenge, offers a counter-solution.
Or discussing a film. I see your point that the ending felt a bit abrupt, but I think it left room for interpretation, which I quite liked. Acknowledges their feeling, presents your different take.
Okay, how about, I get what you're saying, but I feel differently. This seems similar. maybe more focused on feeling or overall understanding.
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Confirms comprehension. But I feel differently is useful when your disagreement isn't purely logical. Maybe it's based on intuition, values, or personal reaction.
Makes sense. So if someone says, you absolutely must follow this career path to be successful.
You could say, I get what you're saying about the traditional route, but I feel differently. I think success can look different for everyone, and exploring other options is important to me. Understands their view, asserts your different feeling value.
Or about a management style. I get what you're saying about the benefits of being very directive, but I feel differently. I think empowering the team leads to more creativity and ownership in the long run. Understands the rationale, presents a different feeling about the outcome.
The source also suggests that's an interesting perspective, but I think when would this be best?
This one's great when someone offers a view that's maybe unusual, unexpected, or something you hadn't considered. Calling it interesting is polite validation before you disagree. Shows you're thinking about it.
The source used it for social media again. That's an interesting perspective, but I actually think it depends on how people use it. Acknowledges their view, then adds nuance.
Let's try another. Someone interprets a historical event in a novel way.
That's an interesting perspective on why that decision was made, but I think the economic factors we discussed earlier were probably more influential. Acknowledges novelty, offers your alternative explanation.
Or they suggest a really unconventional marketing idea.
That's an interesting perspective, definitely outside the box, but I think for our current budget, a more traditional approach might be safer. Compliments creativity, politely disagrees on practicality.
Then there's, I respect your opinion, but I have a different view. This one feels quite direct about the respect part.
Very explicit. Good for potentially sensitive topics where showing respect for the person, even if not the opinion, is key. The source's basic example. I respect your opinion, but I feel differently about that.
Let's apply it. Discussing parenting styles. I respect your opinion on the importance of strict rules, but I have a different view. I favor a more flexible approach based on the child's personality. Clear respect, clear difference.
Or debating political priorities. I respect your opinion that economic growth should be the top priority, but I have a different view. I believe environmental protection needs to be considered equally. Shows respect for their stance before stating yours.
And the last one. I get where you're coming from, but I see it differently. How is it different from I get what you're saying?
I get where you're coming from feels like it digs a bit deeper. Understanding their reasons, their background, their motivation for holding that view, it implies empathy for their starting point.
Ah, right.
Yeah,
So if someone explains their hesitation about a new project based on a past failure,
I get where you're coming from. That last project was really tough, and I understand the caution. But I see it differently this time. We have a much stronger plan and more resources. Shows you understand the source of their feeling before disagreeing about the current situation.
or discussing different ways to manage finances. I get where you're coming from with wanting maximum security in your investments, but I see it differently. I'm comfortable with a bit more risk for potentially higher returns.
Understands their motivation, security. States your different approach, risk tolerance.
These phrases are gold. They allow you to disagree without being disagreeable. They keep the conversation constructive.
Absolutely. They turn potential arguments into respectful exchanges of different viewpoints. It's a sign of mature communication.
Okay, so we can give opinions, agree, disagree. The final piece from the source is about making it all sound more, well, engaging, adding personality. Yeah, because just using the right phrases isn't quite enough sometimes. Native speakers weave in little extras that add flow, character, maybe humor. The source points to two main ways: using natural introductory expressions and adding emotion or humor.
Let's look at those intros first. The source mentions, honestly, I think. To be fair, I'd say. And if you ask me,
Honestly, I think. Using honestly adds that touch of sincerity, like you're sharing a genuine, maybe even slightly vulnerable thought.
the source example. Honestly, I think learning English is one of the best investments in yourself. That honestly makes it sound truly heartfelt.
It does. Let's try more, offering feedback. Honestly, I think your presentation was good, but the slides could have been a bit clearer. Sounds like genuine, constructive feedback.
Admitting something. Honestly, I think I might have left the oven on. Uh-oh. That's a touch of real-life worry.
Expressing strong preference. Honestly, I think pizza is the perfect food for any occasion. Sounds like a deeply held belief.
Okay, to be fair, I'd say. We touched on this. It's about adding balance or acknowledging another side, right?
Exactly. often used to soften a criticism or offer a mitigating factor, like the example we discussed. If someone says the restaurant is slow, you might say.
To be fair, I'd say they seem really short-staffed tonight. You're balancing the complaint with a possible reason.
Or someone criticizes a colleague's mistake.
Mm.
He did mess up the calculation, but to be fair, I'd say the instructions weren't very clear. You acknowledge the mistake, but add context.
It shows you're trying to see the whole picture.
Yeah.
How about if someone praises something excessively? Could you use it then?
You could. Yes, the movie was visually stunning, but to be fair, I'd say the plot was pretty predictable. It balances the praise with the drawback.
Got it. And the last intro, if you ask me, super casual, this one.
Very informal, like you're just tossing your opinion into the mix. The source example. If you ask me, coffee is better than tea any day. A simple, casual preference.
Let's try more. Giving unsolicited advice in a friendly way. If you ask me you should take a break, you look exhausted.
Making a suggestion. If you ask me, we should order pizza tonight instead of cooking.
Stating a pet peeve. If you ask me, people who talk loudly on their phones in public are the worst.
These little intros just make the opinion flow more naturally into the conversation. They feel less like formal declarations.
Right, like conversational grease. And that leads to the other part of engagement, adding emotion or humor. This is where it gets fun. The source examples were great.
They really were. The pineapple on pizza one. I'd say pineapple on pizza is a crime, but that's just me.
It's brilliant. Strong, funny exaggeration, a crime, immediately softened by it, but that's just me. It shows strong feelings, but in a lighthearted, self-aware way, instantly relatable.
Totally. Let's try that style. Talking about Monday mornings.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think waking up on a Monday should come with hazard pay.
Perfect. Or about assembling furniture. If you ask me, those instruction diagrams are a form of modern art completely open to interpretation.
Nice one. Using humor takes the edge off strong opinions and makes you sound more human.
The other source example used strong emotion. Honestly, I'd rather wake up at 5 a.m. than sit in traffic for 2 hours.
So vivid. That comparison really lands the speaker's intense dislike of traffic. You feel it with them.
We can use that structure. About a boring movie. Honestly, I'd rather watch my laundry spin for 2 hours than sit through that film again.
Ouch. Or about a terrible taste. To be fair, I'd say licking a 9-volt battery might be preferable to eating that dish. Extreme comparison for humorous effect.
These techniques, the exaggeration, the humor, the relatable comparisons, the strong emotion, they lift your opinion from just a statement to something memorable and engaging.
It's about showing your personality, how you feel about the topic, not just what you logically conclude. That's what makes connections.
And that really rounds out the toolkit from the source material, giving opinions, agreeing, disagreeing, and making it all engaging.
It's a solid set of strategies, moving beyond the basics.
So quick recap. We looked at alternatives to, I think, in my opinion, personally, I believe, from my perspective, etc., to add nuance.
We covered active agreement phrases like, I couldn't agree more. And that's a great point, often adding a little extra detail.
Then, polite disagreement using structures like, I see your point, but, or I respect your opinion, but, acknowledging first.
And finally, making it engaging with natural intros like, honestly, or if you ask me, and injecting personality with humor or emotion.
The big benefit, as the source stresses, is sounding more natural, more fluent, and definitely feeling more confident when you speak English.
These aren't just tricks. They're how natural conversation actually works.
And to help you actually use this stuff, the source includes a challenge task. Because just listening isn't enough, right?
Absolutely not. Practice is everything. So the challenge is simple but effective. Step 1. Find a conversation, any conversation, where you can express an opinion.
Could be about anything, big or small. A movie, weekend plans, a problem, food, whatever comes up.
Step 2. In that chat, consciously try to use at least one of the new opinion phrases we talked about. And if possible, try one of the agreement or disagreement phrases. Maybe add an engaging intro or a touch of personality. Just try something new.
And step 3, the crucial part. Reflect afterwards. Just take a minute. How did it feel? Did you sound more confident? Which phrase felt easy? What was tricky? What might you try next time?
That reflection piece is key. It cements the learning. It's not about perfection. It's about experimenting and noticing what happens.
Exactly. That's how these phrases go from being things you know to things you actually use without thinking. It takes that active effort.
And interestingly, the source material hints at what comes next, building on this foundation. It mentions storytelling in English.
Ah, yes. Makes total sense. Once you can share your opinions, being able to share experiences, tell anecdotes, explain things with a narrative, that's the next level of connection.
Right. Conversations are full of little stories. The source notes suggest looking at things like basic story structure, using past tenses naturally, keeping people engaged.
Hmm.
All vital
It
skills.
fits perfectly. Moving from stating views to weaving experiences, we'll definitely have to dive into that.
For sure.
Yeah.
But for now, the focus is on today's tools. Remember what the source implies. Your opinion, your perspective, it matters.
And learning to express it clearly and confidently in English isn't just about language learning. It's about making sure your voice is heard in the conversations around you.
It allows you to participate more fully, connect more deeply.
So think about that. With these new phrases and techniques, what conversations are you ready to have? What opinions are you eager to share? Maybe with a bit more nuance or confidence.
Learning to navigate opinions, agreement, disagreement respectfully. It really does shape how you interact with the world. It's more than just words.
So take on that challenge from the source. Pick a phrase, try it out, see how it feels.
Keep practicing, keep talking, and enjoy the journey of finding your voice.
We'll see you next time for that deep dive into storytelling.